Welcome to the Tales of Eldelórne. This is Karleigh, and I'm here reading to you Tales of Eldelórne Book 1. It's a dark fantasy alpha novella. Woo! Can't you just feel that sense of elven innocence that Roevash has, even though he's learned how to defend himself among humans? He's a big guy, and a big target. It's unfortunate that he had to experience all this stuff. You would think things would get a little better now that he's met his uncle. I guess we'll find out, won't we? And now on to the rest of the story. Chapter 7, Roevash's Prayer. The Darjeeling Rangers led Roevash to their hidden outpost in the Illianheni foothills. It was so near where he grew up, and yet it was unknown to him. Roevash looked at the broken-down, rotting tree trunks and remembered his mother's stories of how beautiful the place once was. She'd never brought him to this garden for some reason. When he was young, he imagined something terrible happened to her here. So again, in his fear and support of her feelings, he never asked. They walked down the stone path that had seen better days, towards a rocky cliff face that jutted out. The place was a sheltered, shady spot where many wild flowers grew. There on the ground, he saw the freshly carved stone that marked his father's grave. Roevash read the epitaph out loud. The words were written in his mother's tongue. I give you all my heart, Thendiel. Roevash's eyes stung with tears. His breath seized at speaking his mother's name. Karleigh felt his own grief for his lost brother as well as for this young man who just returned to his family. He placed a consoling hand on Roe's shoulder as he felt his own tears coming. Roe fell mournfully to his knees and wept inconsolably, staring at the gravestone. After showing respect for their fallen comrade, the men backed away, giving the family privacy for their grief. Karleigh reluctantly had to leave because his duties demanded it. Roevash was left alone with his whole long life of misery and misunderstanding crashing down around him. He cried for the father he never would know, and his lost mother and brother. The agony of it poured out of him like waves of an ocean when suddenly another realization hit hard. I am not a monster. I'm from an honorable man. I'm born of the love of my mother and father. Love. I was born of love. His voice trailed off until it was barely a whisper in his exhaustion. As with all young ones, perception comes with time. Roe received the grace he needed to release this pain he had been carrying for so long. He sent all the losses he'd suffered out to the Lords, letting a new song grow in his heart. It began to rain, and Roevash looked peacefully into the storm above. He was born anew as the drops fell onto his face, washing away salty tears. Lightning flashed across the sky, and he smiled. His uncle suddenly appeared beside him, urging him inside. Come in before the unforgiving torrent of waters floods the pools. You'll be stuck out here if that should happen." Roevash was finished. He was tired, hungry, cold, and very relieved that he never succeeded in cutting off his ears. This day was a new day to start again. Karleigh was the younger brother of Roe's father. They were from a clan of very tall, sturdy men from Dargilian, a mountainous region few ordinary humans dare climb. The lords of Ilmatar had blessed their bloodline with long lives because they helped the newly born elves when they were first sent into the realm of men. History tells us the elves found themselves awake, having washed up on sandy northern shores. They were delicate and silent like the deer, with no will to fight. Not knowing anything, they wandered in small groups, naked, into the lands. Common men who were easily swayed into evil behavior thought it sport to hunt and kill, or even torture the elves. Bands of such men with clubs were found bludgeoning the elves to death in great numbers before they could even stand up on their newly formed legs. The Dargilian put a stop to the killings, and from that day on, they patrolled their northern shores, gathering in the remaining Edelin, protecting them until they came into their full awareness. It was good to be among honorable folk who felt like a family. Roevash had not realized how much he missed this kind of kinship. Battle and war had afforded him little or no kindness in all these years. His lost right eye was always an ugly reminder of this. He wore his hand-sewn leather patch to cover it up, but it was never forgotten. The eye covering didn't make him look any less distinguished, because Roevash would be considered handsome. He just couldn't accept this in his mind. Always thinking himself grotesque, his behavior sometimes twisted to match those feelings, and he had practiced a dark, stubborn temperament. War allowed him to vent a blackened rage on his enemy, and he did so very well and efficiently. He had become a deadly foe and valued among comrades. That is, until they noticed he never aged, or they spied his ears. Men he'd run up against felt justified in their anger towards the Edelin. They thought the elves disappeared when they needed them most. They had no understanding of Lord Untuoni or how the lords compelled them with such pain. They just had to leave. No matter what the cause, without reason, whenever he was discovered, they directed all their outrage at Roevash. It was as if he was to be held personally to blame for all the elves that ever lived in the kingdom. Humans inevitably became violent, and Roe suffered verbal and sometimes physical abuse. Lucky for his attackers, he chose not to fight back against their ignorance, as he very well could have. Not wanting to harm innocents, even if they did deserve it, Roevash would remind himself, "Human life is made short enough without my help." Then he would slip away where he would be unknown, find some other force of soldiers to join. There was always fighting, always rumors of war. All the while he traveled, he would inquire after his younger brother, blond with odd eyes. Humans had never heard of such a person, so he moved on. In those days, Roe felt so alone living among humans. Ninhan Guranithia Lune Lu Governathem. Shining One, I carry these tears in your name, lost in strands of time and spirit song. May your heart find solace and your pain diminish. I was cruel and deserve not to hear your voice or see your beautiful shining eyes again. I have filled your heart with such tears of despair. I can only pray my desire to find you unharmed comes real, that I might embrace you as true brothers will. Time is on our side, for we are Edelin. I will not stand by our mother's home again until you return with me. Gwestanu de Shirathon. This is my solemn vow. These are the words Roevash spoke from his heart as he knelt and prayed over his father's grave. He solemnly visited the marker every day since he came to Illianheni nearly 8 months earlier. He had taken up talking to his father and mother as if they were there somewhere near the stone. Roe found some comfort in knowing they were happy once. He liked to imagine them walking here in the grand gardens of the past. It also helped him make up his mind concerning his future and what to do next to find his brother. Young Agelam's mother had just disappeared from his sight when his older brother's face turned upon him. It was distorted and frightening as he bellowed loud booming words. Agelam did not hear the words. He just felt the accusations and fear. The wave of his brother's anger crashed hard, so he turned and ran. Agelam thought he'd disappear through the forest into the river beyond, to grieve for a time alone, but he was caught up in a brilliant, unseen light. There was a muffled popping noise as the air seemed to gel in his ears and thicken all around him. He shattered apart into a billion tiny glittering fragments. He was so startled that he snapped himself back together by sheer accident. He tripped forward and stumbled over loosely through a stream, as if swimming through an ocean current. There was no up or down. He would have continued spiraling, except by his will he brought himself to a stop. In that instant, he was standing somewhere he did not recognize. Strangely, he did not feel afraid as he glanced down at his hands and saw that he still had all sides of his solid, reassembled fingers. Looking around, he found a faintly familiar scene, a faded garden in a fine mist. He could hear the mindful hum of all things in creation and the silent flowing music from a host of unseen voices that inhabited this place. Something, or someone, whispered gently in his mind and comforted him. I'm tired, he thought, as he lay down into the nothingness and slept. I guess in a sense Roevash did meet his father, and he learned about the love that his mother and father had for one another. He also learned about the Dargilian people. They were not perfect, but they had a sense of honor that is not unlike the Edelin. Spoiler alert! Come back next time to hear more in Chapter 8 about Ejlum and what really did happen to him. Bye-bye. Elvish Lesson of the Day. Deno means please forgive me. It means forgive me, but even more so it means I am not worthy. Please regard me as lower than the dirt on the bottom of your foot. Not even just the bottom of your foot, lower than the dirt. Deno. Deno. You say that when you really screwed up. Thank you for listening. You can join me in more adventures if you press the follow button. I will personally send you a new episode every Thursday so you can hear the rest of the story.